Alright, so we used Sketch 24 twice, and it was used for both projected curves. So we can leave the end of the wing where it is, and we can simply just drag this thing up a little bit higher, and pretty much that should take care of it. It'll take care of both projected curves. Now the wing has more arc in it. It's going up higher. I really didn't need to make these visible. I want to hide that curve as well. And when I drag this boundary surface now the entire thing is above that midline of the body. Now, like I said, that might not be exactly how it was on the actual plane, but that's not necessarily an issue depending on what you're trying to do with these models. So I think this option, in terms of difficulty both in my modeling process and trying to explain this, the benefits of moving the wing up definitely outweigh the downfall in the look of the model. But actually, however, saying that, I'm looking at this thing and I don't really like how high it is, so I do want to adjust it a little bit, and I'm going to bring it back down. I know because the midline of this entire this entire plane is right here, I know exactly where it is. I'm going to just bring it down to there and take another look at it. Alright, and then the next thing I want to do, Sketch 32, I'm just going to edit that a little bit. Let's give this 80 degrees on the back side and 55 up front. Alright, so you can see here's our midline. It's going to hit right there. It's still not something I'm too happy about. So I'm just going to play with these numbers a little bit more. And sometimes actually steepening up this angle but reducing the weight of it will probably be a better option in terms of the look of the end model. So that wing look is probably going to be a little bit better. So now let's just look at the evaluate and see what we've actually done here. Now again, we're not creating a plane that's actually going to fly anywhere, but the curvature on the front edge and the back edge of a wing is extremely important. You can see here we've actually changed the curvature. You can see the color, it's like a light gray here, but it's more of a purplish blue here. This would potentially cause a problem if we were trying to create something, and especially here. So what's going to happen here when the wind hits the wing, you're talking about a much different pressure. The forces on the wing here from the pressure created are probably going to introduce some issues. Not really something we need to talk about here, but if you were really considering this thing, even on a hobby level, if you were trying to make a remote control airplane or something, this is definitely something that you need to consider, and the curvature analysis is certainly going to help that. You would want to keep this fairly consistent, or actually even tapering back towards here where there's more meat in the wing. You don't want these these high forces acting on the end of the wing. But like I said, not really something we need to discuss here or consider for our modeling process. Just some information for you to think about. One thing I want to do, one more thing I want to talk about is trimming these surfaces up. Now, if you remember, a few videos ago we talked about trimming these back and blending them, and if you remember, it was a plane that was 40 millimeters above this line. Now, obviously, this right here is not 40 millimeters. It's a couple millimeters up. So if we were to go ahead and trim this wing to this surface right here, later on in the model, when we're talking about going back and blending these things in, then we might have a gap in the surface here that we need to deal with. So for now, I'm not going to do anything with this wing. I'm going to leave it just like it is. It's got extra length to it, and this surface, what I'm probably going to do before these all get knitted together and trimmed, I'll probably blend the midline of this thing, and then I will blend the wing into that midline blend at some point. So it'll be trimmed probably with an offset surface. We'll use an offset surface, trim this away from the body just a little bit, and then we will trim the body and blend everything back in. So we're not going to deal with that right at this moment, but I just wanted to mention it here because some of you might be saying, well, why aren't you trimming the wing? You just created it, you should really take care of it now. Well, I don't want to deal with it now, just for that main reason, because it is so close to this midline here, and I know that the blend that I'm going to create on this midline later on in the model is going to affect the transition of the wing. So again, these are little things that you need to think about. If you were to go ahead and trim this now and you come back later, you might be making more work for yourself than you really need to. I'm going to go ahead and save that. The end of the wing, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to use a filled surface. This is actually planar, and you could use this planar surface option just between these two. There's really no difference between, in this case there's no difference. Planar surface, at least for me, almost never gets used. There's never been a case that filled surface wouldn't handle what planar surface would. But obviously the other way around, planar surface won't do, even a small percentage of what you can do with filled surface. So we cap the end off, and we're going to come back and we're going to blend all this stuff in. But I like to leave a lot of those blending details out as late as possible in the model. And like with the midline of the body, I did play with it a little bit, showed you the fillets and the differences. But really, the main part of the body, I like to leave as many details to last as possible, and that goes with just about anything. Now the exception to that is, like I mentioned earlier when we were blending, if you need that blended detail to carry into some other part of the model. If this blend was extremely important to where the wing was going to hit, and for some reason I couldn't use this midline, I would have considered doing the blend as soon as I finish this bottom set of surfaces. And you can also see I haven't knitted anything together yet, and there is a good reason for that. You don't necessarily need to wait till the end to knit everything together, but if you don't need to knit together, then I don't suggest you just do it to do it. The only times I knit together is when I need the edges all to be one. If I need to perform some sort of trim operation that I don't want to do 3 or 4 times on different sections, I might knit the surrounding geometry together and go from there. But what I want to show you is, let's see where it is, feature statistics. Now if we drag this thing out, we can't open it far enough to see all of our features at once, but basically here you have your rebuild times. So time in percentage, time in second, and it shows you which fills take the most. Now surface knit here, obviously these filled surfaces, because of the equal curvature relations that we were adding, you can see the nose on the top, the nose on the bottom, and these fuselage pieces where we did end up having to use that equal curvature relation take a good portion of our rebuild time. Now in the grand scheme of things, on my computer we're talking a second, 3/4 of a second, half a second, and if you look at total rebuild time, it's under 5 seconds still. But once we start adding a bunch of these features in here, and like with the knit, you would knit because you need to do some fillets or something, the rebuild time in terms of all the rest of the model, I mean, 1/4 of a second in a 4.5 second rebuild time is a decent amount. If you start talking about hundreds or even a couple hundreds of surfaces, you're talking about maybe dozens of knits, maybe some some more extreme geometry in here. You're going to start really kicking up that rebuild time. So I'm just going to apply a fillet to this. Now a fillet on these surfaces, not only does it need to trim back the surrounding areas, but it also needs to apply this constant radius over all these changing surfaces. If we go back into feature statistics, then you can see that fillet, well, that was pretty high. The surface fill down here was still the the main hog of our system, but that fillet's it's not really that far behind. We just added another second to our rebuild time, and that's 1 second out of 5.5 seconds is a pretty huge